Spider-Man Homecoming is just around the corner and we can't wait! While we know the Vulture is the big baddie this time around, we couldn't help but wonder who else Marvel considered for the role. Perhaps one of these will eventually be featured on the big screen, but we decided to give you an awesome list of baddies that we'd love to see in Homecoming if the Vulture wasn't confirmed. For this list, we largely excluded anyone who's already been featured on the big screen. Before we get started though, be sure to hit that subscribe button to stay in the loop with all things CBR.
Fool! Mysterio is no illusionist playing parlor tricks. Mysterio is the master of the arcane arts!
Well, seems to me Mysterio is the master of talking about himself in the third person.
We shall see.
Mysterio. After seeing how visually engaging Doctor Strange can be, we can't wait for Marvel to return to the world of trippy visuals and mind games. And who better to do that than the famed Spider-Man villain Mysterio?
You're the only one who has to worry about getting hurt, pal.
I'm more than ready to take you on.
A member of the Sinister Six, Mysterio is no pushover when it comes to supervillain nastiness. He prefers to use treachery of the mind rather than physical violence to take on Spider-Man. This could not only be a welcome change of pace considering the foes we've seen on screen before, but also be visually engaging. With his mastery of illusions, Mysterio can actually bypass Spider-Man's much-needed Spidey senses, which could put Peter Parker at a serious disadvantage. Nothing is more interesting than seeing your heroes struggle and overcome their challenges, and this would certainly be one of them, especially for a fairly untested Spider-Man. Mysterio, under the guise of his alter ego Dr. Ludwig Reinhardt, hypnotized Spider-Man once, driving him mad and almost forcing him to reveal his identity to the world. There is so much potential here that could separate Mysterio from the rest of the brawlers that Spidey's so used to facing on the big screen.
No! Spider-Man! Maybe I should take superhero lessons from the Hulk instead.
Black Cat. Seriously though, Spider-Man needs some more awesome female baddies. When it comes to fulfilling that role, however, there's the one and only Black Cat to answer the call. Felicia Hardy may have been present on the big screen during the events of Amazing Spider-Man 2, but Felicity Jones never got around to sporting the famous costume. We want to see Hardy fully dressed up, making Spider-Man's life a complete nuisance. Or, depending on her mood, she might play the role of lifesaver and potentially love interest as well as an ally. Black Cat is fickle like that, her allegiances shift all the time.
Sweet ride!
Haven't you heard? Crime pays.
I'm not listening! La 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 la.
Felicia Hardy is definitely an interesting character in this regard, and her femme fatale-like demeanor would certainly be fun to watch on the big screen. She may be a bit similar to Catwoman, being a thief and tied to a hero, but that doesn't mean she's any less interesting. While she's both an ally and villain to Spider-Man, the potential for her having her own spin-off feature is much higher, and dare we say, much more welcome, than most of the other films on this list. Give us a Black Cat film over another attempt at the Sinister Six any day, please. Chameleon. Fun fact, but Chameleon is actually Spider-Man's oldest villain. So in that respect, Chameleon definitely deserves a spot on our list. Debuting back in Amazing Spider-Man #1, Chameleon has the awesome ability of blending in. He can change his race, gender, age, and other visual points of reference that would make hunting him extremely difficult. It's always great when a villain can get into the head of our hero instead of being a physical threat, and Chameleon definitely fits that bill. Imagine how stressed Parker would be if he was hunting down Chameleon and he didn't know where to look. Chameleon could literally be sitting right next to him at school and Parker wouldn't know until Chameleon made a move. It proved to be an interesting game of cat and mouse. Much like Loki changing into Captain America in Thor: The Dark World, the filmmakers can have fun with the Chameleon and toss in a few cameos here as well. But would this version of Tony Stark be as willing to help Peter? We think not, and it'd be a great character moment for Peter to believe he's being abandoned by everyone he holds dear, when in reality, he's being deceived.
I'm stronger and faster than you!
Scorpion. Okay, so let's just get it out of the way. If Scorpion were to be featured on the big screen, he'd need some kind of cool cosmetic makeover. He may have looked cool on the comic book pages at the time, but that look isn't going to fly on the big screen. Much like Vulture, he's going to need a new outfit. Scorpion is certainly a unique villain. Unlike most villains who are failed experiments, Mac Gargan was actually hired by none other than J. Jonah Jameson to take pictures of Spider-Man for him. Jameson suggested that he undergo a procedure to bond his body to the Scorpion suit in order to get the edge over Spider-Man.
Go! Go! Get him!
But, of course, things went sideways and he lost his sanity. He did walk away with a set of powers not unlike those of a real Scorpion. Furious, he went to take out his wrath not only on Spider-Man, but Jameson as well. Serves him right in the end, eh? This would ironically give Spider-Man a chance to save Jameson from harm, something he'd naturally spin into a headline about the web-slinger being an evil vigilante in the end. But still, it's the thought that counts.
Cassidy is gone. There is only Carnage!
Carnage. We may have to wait a while for this one to happen, but of all the Spider-Man villains ever published, Carnage is certainly high up for fans' wish lists. Unlike Venom, who's something of an anti-hero slash villain, Carnage is straight up evil. He might even be too hardcore for the folks at Marvel who run the MCU, but with all this crossover business with Sony, we're sure there's a way to make it happen. Carnage is unique in that he's not a crime lord or a super villain out to take over the city or some nonsense like that. Carnage, like Venom, came from the alien symbiote and shares a lot of his abilities with Spider-Man, but unlike most villains, he's a pure psychotic evil.
Think of the damage we can do now, man!
He may not be particularly layered, and he's certainly one of the greatest challenges Spider-Man's had to face, forcing him to team up with Venom even to tackle the threat that is Carnage. That's how intense he is. Carnage could very well be the bridge that links Spider-Man's films and Venom's together, a shared crossover that fans would clamor over. Morlun. If supervillains got together to hand out awards to each other, then Morlun would probably be bestowed their highest honor. Unlike the rest of the villains on this list, Morlun's actually got around to taking Spider-Man out of the picture completely. Morlun is kind of like a vampire, in that he's immortal and drains the energy out of superheroes, much like how a vampire drains blood. Specifically, he drains the energy out of all the different Spider-Men in the multiverse. He's exceptionally powerful and not easily distracted, making him a big problem for Spider-Man. Spider-Man was, of course, brought back to life during his bout with Morlun. With superhero films experimenting with different subgenres, it would be quite fascinating to see a comic book movie inspired by neo-gothic visuals, as well as dabble into the supernatural. Most supervillains are enhanced by some kind of science experiment, but to go up against Morlun would be a game changer. Black Tarantula. There's a lot of information out there on the Black Tarantula and many different incarnations of him. Said to be a former European explorer who traveled to Japan, he was trained in the arts of ninja combat by the hand. He was bestowed a potion that granted him a healing power not unlike Wolverine or Deadpool, superior strength, speed, and a unique form of immortality, upon which the abilities of the tarantula are passed down the gene pool. Oh, and as a last resort, he can shoot friggin' laser beams out of his eyes, although the process leaves him seriously weakened, thus, he only uses it as a last resort. The Black Tarantula in the comics actually removed Spider-Man's mask and delivered it to the crime boss Don Fortunato. In an interesting twist, Tarantula had no interest in learning Spider-Man's real identity, fulfilling the wishes of the crime world to the exact detail. Nothing more. This villain is probably one of the more unknowns on this list, but also one of the most fearsome. He would certainly be a fresh perspective for Spider-Man to tackle if they wish to step away from the classic roster of villains.
Where is the other one?
Right here, Kingpin, and the name's Daredevil.
You would have to be a daredevil to dare to challenge me.
Kingpin. He may already be a menace on Netflix's Daredevil series, but since that series takes place within the MCU and Peter Parker's homecoming is part of that universe, there's no reason why the Kingpin of crime can't be the first character to jump from the small screen to the big screen. He is, after all, one of Spider-Man's most fearsome enemies, as well as Daredevil's. Perhaps there's a crossover event that could detail this. One can wish. In the comics, Kingpin is a huge and terrifying crime boss who uses his money, influence, and brains just as much as he uses his terrifying displays of power. Kingpin may look extremely overweight, but the man is actually almost all muscle. You don't want to pick a fight with this guy. In the Spider-Man No More arc, Peter Parker has hung up his suit for good, electing to retire from his duties as a costumed hero.
You were right. What you told me over the radio that night. Not everyone deserves a happy ending.
Kingpin takes complete advantage of this and brings down his wrath on New York City. The chaos was getting so out of hand that Parker had no choice but to don the suit yet again and put a stop to Kingpin's madness.
Wait, are you a crazy hunter or a crazy landscaper? I'm confused.
I am Kraven the Hunter.
Kraven the Hunter. A longtime favorite of fans of the comic books, Kraven the Hunter is certainly one of Spider-Man's most celebrated and famous villains. As you may have already guessed, Kraven is one hell of an excellent hunter, with a skill set that would put most big game players to shame. He can trap and stalk anything, which is big trouble for someone who relies so heavily on his Spidey senses. In addition to his skills, Kraven sometimes opts to use a special potion to boost his strength, because this is the comic book world and everyone needs a little help from time to time. Kraven is mentally unhinged, however. He's dangerously obsessed with Spider-Man and prefers to use his bare hands as opposed to any form of weaponry. Kraven actually even got around to pulling off a plan that could have seen the death of the old web slinger in the comic book run Kraven's Last Hunt, the series that put Kraven on the map. Instead of using a bullet to take out Spidey, Kraven elected to use a tranquilizer dart and prove a point. He still buried him alive underground though, so he's not all sunshine and daisies. It's in this series that Parker makes good use of the black suit we all love. Speaking of which,
we are Venom. And we are going to end this once and for all.
Venom, Eddie Brock. Tom Hardy may have just been recently cast as Venom in his own solo film, but that doesn't mean we don't want to see our favorite symbiote on the big screen clashing with the man who can do whatever a spider can. Unlike Spider-Man, Venom belongs exclusively to Sony and isn't part of the MCU, so while he can't cross over at this point in time, we can still hope that these two juggernauts will somehow share the screen again, only this time living up to fan expectations. Venom is a fascinating character. He's not quite a villain, but he's also not a hero. He's teamed up with Spider-Man as well as fought him several times, as Eddie Brock blames Spider-Man largely for his failures in life and for him being in his current situation. Seeing Venom not only clash physically with Parker, but to get into his head and force him to question everything about his character would be a nice twist on things. Venom is by far one of the most popular comic book villains of all time, and seeing him share the screen with Spider-Man is something fans seriously want to see.
What do you think? The Arachnomet? Webbed wonders. Spider-Man and his amazing goo-covered frenemy? Ow!
Shut up and get the job done. I want this over.
There you have it, folks. Which villain do you hope to eventually see in a Spider-Man movie, and why? Do you think Marvel should go big or find a more obscure villain for their next bout? Whatever you think, let us know in the comments below. Be sure to give this vid a like, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more geeky content from CBR.